The regular meeting of the Independent School District 279 School Board is called to order at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, November 27, 2018. Seated in front of you this evening, from my left to your right, are Director Dean Henke, Director Jim Burgett, myself, Director Mike Ostafi, Director Heather Douglas, Director Jessica Craig, and Interim Superintendent Dr. James Bauk. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Director Burgett, if you could please lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Board members, in front of you is the agenda. You've had time to review that. Are there any additions anyone would like to add to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to accept the agenda as written?
So moved.
Director Douglas, second. Second by Director Henke. All in favor of accepting the agenda as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is accepted as written. At this time, I will ask that newly elected school board member Jackie Mosqueda Jones please meet me in front of the dais so that I may perform the oath of office. So I have a few words to say, and they're spelled out for me, so I'll try not to miss them. In carrying out this responsibility, you will be asked to fulfill the roles of vision, structure, accountability, and advocacy. In providing vision, the board, with participation of the community, envisions the community's educational future and then formulates the goals, defines the outcomes, and sets the course for the public schools. To achieve the vision, the board establishes a structure and creates an environment designed to ensure all students the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. Because as a board, we must be accountable to the community, we must ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children. As board members, we serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision for our schools. Furthermore, we must strive to work together with the superintendent and staff to lead the district toward fulfilling our mission, which is to inspire and prepare all students with the confidence, courage, and competence to achieve their dreams, contribute to community, engage in a lifetime of learning. Can you please, Jackie, please raise your right hand and read the oath.
Having signed the acceptance of office and oath of office, I hereby publicly affirm my commitment to the oath of office. I swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state, and I will discharge faithfully the duties of this office of school board member of Independent School District number 279 to the best of my judgment and ability.
Welcome.
Your seat is waiting. We are now at full strength. The next agenda item is audience opportunity to address the school board, and seeing no cards, we will move on to item number 6, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Bauk.
Thank you, Chair Ostafi. As a regular part of my report is to share points of pride. Our points of pride celebrate students, staff, community members who are contributing to the accomplishment of our mission. And as usual, I've asked cabinet members to share some of these points of pride this evening.
In the category of achieving dreams, the CI adapted soccer team in Osseo area schools competed a successful season by placing 3rd at the state tournament. The PI adapted soccer team also competed at state. After an opening round loss, the PI team battled back to win its next game and placed 6th overall. The girls swimming and diving team at Maple Grove Senior High added a section championship to its list of accomplishments this season. Additionally, The team qualified 6 swimmers and 1 diver to the state tournament. Osseo senior high swimmer Amber Cronquist also competed at state, finishing 13th in the 100-yard butterfly. The Loppet Foundation's Mini Lopet, which helps students at Parkbrook Elementary learn how to cross-country ski, was awarded 3rd place in the world in the International Ski Federation's Bring Children to Snow campaign. The Loppet Foundation has been one of Parkbrook's community partners for several years and will expand its outreach in Osseo area schools to include Crestview Elementary this year.
Our next category is contributing to community. Several high school students from Maple Grove, Osseo, and Park Center were part of an event at the Osseo Maple Grove American Legion to celebrate Armistice Day. The students reported on their experiences at statewide American Legion and American Legion auxiliary events this summer. A complete list of student participants can be found on the district website. Students at Cedar Island Elementary collected more than 2,200 books for Hospitality House Youth Development, a Minneapolis-based nonprofit that serves inner-city youth and their families. In addition to the books, the Cedar Island PTO donated $150 for the purchase of bookshelves. The school's partnership with Hospitality House began through a connection with a former Cedar Island teacher.
Last month, students and staff at Maple Grove Middle School came together after school to make 600 sandwiches for people experiencing homelessness. This community service project was part of the Lights On After School national campaign. In the category of lifelong learning, in late October, 5th graders from Crestview Elementary and their classroom teachers attended a 3-day camp at the Audubon Center of the North Woods. Students learned from naturalists who led team building, a high ropes challenge, a survival class, and other outdoor activities. Students also learned about the people and wildlife native to the area. Kelly Booth, a counselor at Crestview, applied for the grant from the Audubon Center to make this opportunity possible.
Under the category of mission-driven employees, Staff Development Assessment Specialist Julie Oslin was invited to review screening assessment materials in Washington, D.C. in January by WIDA, a national leader in developing resources for multilingual learners. The invitation is both an honor and an opportunity for Julie to work with experts across the nation to create high-quality assessment materials that are effective, age-appropriate, and culturally responsive.
Okay, I have a couple items to add to Beyond the Points of Pride. First of all, I just wanted to let board members know I had an opportunity last week to meet not just with Jackie, but Tanya and Kelsey. We met for over 2 hours in an orientation session. So we've started that process, and it was a good meeting. I think the topics ranged from about A to Z and probably 1 to infinity. They are firmly anxious about their new duties. So, but it was a good meeting, and we have a lot more ground to cover. And then the second thing I wanted to do tonight, although you haven't taken official action yet, I wanted to introduce our replacement for Patricia, who's leaving us at the end of December. Ron Meyer is on your personnel consent agenda tonight, and Ron comes to us from Eden Prairie School District, and he will be our new executive director of finance and operation. And I see he's sitting in finance row back there tonight. But Ron, would you just stand for a moment? So appreciate that, and I know you had a chance to meet with board members before the meeting, so welcome aboard, and we look forward to your transition time in December and full-time in January. So thank you, Ron. And Mr. Chair, that's my report for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bauk. Our next agenda item are the school board reports, and with the November 13th, 2018 work session, Director Henke, could you please read that report?
I am not sure that I have it.
Okay, does anyone have that report?
No, here it is, I got it. On November 13th, school board members learned about options under consideration by the Enrollment and Capacity Management Advisory Committee, ECMAC, for short, to reduce overcapacity conditions at Basswood, Garden City, and Rice Lake Elementary schools. 2 options included adding space to Oakview Elementary, which could absorb additional students, and Garden City Elementary, which has a growing number of students from within its own attendance area, and adjusting elementary attendance areas as needed. The school board affirmed the guiding principles and additional considerations that will guide the work of an ECMAC subcommittee, the attendance area team that will recommend boundary adjustments in February 2019. Next, board members learned about the fiscal year 2020 budget planning process, and provided direction on budget parameters. Staff recommended certification of the final payable 2019 tax levy at the dollar amount presented, which includes expanded lease levy authority. The board will certify the final levy on December 18th following the Truth in Taxation hearing. Finally, board members shared thoughts about last year's superintendent search, considered a preliminary framework for this year's work, reviewed staff roles, and reaffirmed their commitment to transparency and consistent communication in the search process. All school board work sessions are open to the public and are either video or audio recorded. Members of the public can access recordings of work sessions on the district website.
Thank you, Director Henke. For the October 30th and November 28th Policy Committee meetings, Director Douglas, can you please read the reports?
Yes.
Thank you.
Policy Committee reports. Meeting of October 30th, 2018. The School Board Policy Committee met at the ESC at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, October 30th, 2018. Board members Jim Burgett, myself, Heather Douglas, and Dean Hinke attended. Also attending were Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Jeremy Willey, and CIES coordinators Jill Kind, Andy Bedeau, and Robin Gonzalez, and General Counsel Tim Palmatier. The committee reviewed proposed changes to the following policies. Policy 613, graduation requirements. Policy 652, instructional materials selection and production. And Policy 654, instructional materials reevaluation. The committee discussed and agreed to rewrite Policy 613 that reflects the current state graduation standards which have been mandated by statute since Policy 613 was last amended. The committee also discussed and agreed to propose policy language addressing the requirements and process that must be followed for students seeking early graduation. As a result of its review, the committee recommended that Policy 613, as rewritten policy, be moved forward to its first reading at tonight's meeting. The committee also considered amendments to Policy 652, instructional materials selection and production. Specifically, the committee agreed to propose changes to the criteria for selection of instructional materials. The proposed revised selection criteria more closely align with Minnesota School Boards Association's model policies, and they reflect current state mandates pertaining to instruction in English and American Heritage education. The committee also agreed to a proposal to incorporate the provisions of Policy 654, which afford a process for challenging the district's selection of instructional materials, into Policy 652. Finally, the committee agreed to the proposed repeal of current Policy 654, instructional materials reevaluation, because of its incorporation into Policy 652. The committee proposed that the revisions to Policy 652 and the repeal of Policy 654 be moved forward for the first reading at tonight's meeting. Meeting of November 26, 2018. The School Board Policy Committee met for another meeting at the ESC at 6 p.m. on Monday, November 26, 2018. Board members Jim Burgett, myself, Heather Douglas, and Dean Hinke attended. Also attending were Superintendent Jim Bauk, Coordinator of Health and Safety Dave Mordock, and General Counsel Tim Palmatier. The committee reviewed proposed changes to the following policies. Policy 452, conceal and carry for employees. Policy 926, conceal and carry on school premises, and Policy 921, non-use of tobacco on school premises. The committee reviewed Policy 452, conceal and carry for employees, and agreed to maintain the substantive provisions of the policy. The only changes to the policy recommended were to revise the title of the policy and to update its formatting to incorporate a purpose section, which is consistent with current formatting for district policies. The committee also discussed proposed revisions to Policy 926, conceal and carry on school premises. The committee discussed and agreed to proposed revisions which align the policy with current state law, which more broadly prohibit possession of any dangerous weapon on school property, including other weapons in addition to firearms. The committee also discussed and agreed to a reasonable prohibition against possession of look-alike weapons on school property. Finally, the committee discussed and agreed to specific exceptions to the policy, which reflect exceptions specifically stated under Minnesota statute. Finally, the committee discussed and proposed rewrite of Policy 921, non-use of tobacco on school premises. Consistent with Minnesota law, the committee agreed to include electronic cigarettes as being prohibited under the policy. In addition, the committee agreed to incorporate potential exceptions to the policy, which reflect exceptions established under Minnesota statute. These include exceptions for certain Native American spiritual or cultural ceremonies and circumstances where an adult non-student possesses an FDA-approved tobacco or nicotine cessation product. The committee approved the amendments to policies 452, 926, and 921 for first reading at the regular school board meeting on December 18th, 2018. The next policy committee meeting is scheduled to be held at the ESC on Tuesday, January 22nd, 2018 at 6 p.m. 19, sorry, it actually says 2017 on my paper.
Sorry about that.
So, sorry about that.
I
Policy
apologize.
committee meetings are open to the public, and community members are encouraged to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Douglas. We also have a report from the October 29th, 2018 Enrollment and Capacity Management Committee meeting. Director Burgett, can you please read the report?
Certainly.
Thank you.
The purpose of the Enrollment Capacity Management Advisory Committee, also known as ECMAC, is to increase community trust in long-range planning for enrollment and building use. This committee analyzes information affecting enrollment capacity and building use and generates observations and recommendations to be communicated to district administration. At the October 29th meeting, ECMAC members learned about the work done by staff over the summer and early fall to develop options for addressing capacity concerns at some schools. Members were invited to join a subcommittee, the Attendance Area Team, whose purpose is to increase community trust in the process used to identify boundary adjustments that the larger group will recommend for implementation in the fall of 2020. Information that was reviewed at the October meeting has been posted to the district website. And as always, all school board work sessions are open to the public and are either video or audio recorded. Members of the public can access recordings of work sessions on the district website. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Burgett. Next on the agenda is item number 8, which is a presentation of the fiscal year 2018 audit report and student activity report. Kelly Benoit. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Ostafi, school board members, and Superintendent Bauk. Tonight, our external auditor will be presenting the audited financial statements. We shared the preliminary financial results with the board at the September meeting. Those results have not changed. Jim Eichten, the managing partner from MMKR, will be presenting the fiscal year 2018 audit report this evening. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Kelly. Again, my name is Jim Eichten. I'm with MMKR CPAs. I'm the auditor for the district. Looks like she's going to help me out. There we go. I'm here this evening to provide a presentation of the audit report for the year ended June 30th, 2018. We did have an opportunity earlier to present this information to both administration and the superintendent. I'm here this evening to provide a brief presentation of the overall financial results as well as the audit results for the year. It's important to understand the role of the auditor. It is a requirement in state law that the school district issue an annual financial statement. That financial statement is then required to be audited by an independent certified public accountant. That is my role here with the district. As part of that process, we do issue a number of opinions on the financial results, which include the financial opinion of the district's financial statements, but as well as the audit of the student activities that the district has. As part of the annual audit process, we're also required to issue opinions on your internal controls, your compliance with laws and regulations as it relates to the financial statements, as well as we do provide an audit of your a single audit of your federal awards, which is a significant portion of the audit and a significant portion of the revenues that we receive at the district. We also issue an opinion on your compliance with state laws and regulations. The State Auditor's Office provides us with a list of laws that we audit, and we go through that list and provide opinions of compliance. Also, the Minnesota Department of Education provides a manual for activity fund accounting that we also issue an opinion on your compliance with. So in our packet of information that we provided to the district, we also issue what's called the management report. And in that management report, we provide information on really what the results of the audit were in a document that you can read through and really get a feel for how the audit went without me actually standing here. But I will go through the highlights of that information. First of all, we did issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements as mentioned. That could be classified maybe better as a clean opinion. It was the opinion you were looking for going into the audit. We did issue in that opinion an emphasis of a matter. There's a pretty significant new accounting standard, a new GASB standard that was implemented this year, GASB 75 on OPEB. That particular standard really changed the reporting to reporting the full OPEB liabilities on your financial statements, when in the past we were only reporting really how well you were funding that obligation. I did mention the student activity audit. We did issue a clean opinion on that particular audit, as well as no findings in any of the internal control opinions or compliance reports that I previously mentioned. Moving on to the single audit of federal awards, we did have one finding this year. In particular, it related to our testing in the child nutrition area. We noted at one school this year that the retention and preparation of production and food service menu records was not occurring. It did happen at just one location. That particular single audit of federal awards is required then to issue a corrective action plan. And frankly, the corrective action plan probably took place about an hour after we found the finding, given the staff at the school district. So you can anticipate that that particular corrective action plan is accepted by the district, is pretty much in action as we speak, related to that particular federal award. We did not have any findings to report in the student activity area, but we did have one finding to report in the compliance with Minnesota laws and regulations. It is a requirement in state law that the district receive what's called a contractor's withholding affidavit prior to any payments to contractors, to final payment of any contractor in the construction areas. We did note in some of the contracts that we selected that particular contractor withholding affidavit was not being received prior to that final payment. Ultimately, it was being received, but it is required to be received prior to the payment going out. So again, the district does implement a corrective action plan, and again, that corrective action plan was discussed at our meeting, as well as at the audit time that the corrective action probably, again, is already taking place as we stand here today. I wanted to then move forward to what I call the second part of any audit, the first part being all the compliance that I just discussed. The second part is how well the school is doing financially. We like to go through in our report some trend information to highlight that. Some information in my management report that you'll find includes some trend line information on general education aid. You'll see over the last 5-6 years of presentation that the funding of Minnesota public education in the state of Minnesota has improved slightly. You can see there a 2% increase in the funding formula is better than we've seen probably a decade before that, but again, it is only 2%. The inflation and the cost of business is going up greater than that particular percentage, and it continues to be a challenge to balance the revenue increases with the expenditure increases here in the state of Minnesota. We do provide information in our report on fund balances. Fund balance is a key indicator of well-being in terms of equity of a school district, and we compare that to really expenditures, which is an indicator of your overall operations. This particular percentage is really the statewide percentages. It isn't the same percentages used by the district. It is a statewide percentage. You can see overall in our state, fund balances have stabilized. Most districts are keeping similar fund balances as they go through the years. Osseo is no different. Your fund balances as a percentage of your expenditures have been consistent over the last several years, which is really what is planned by the district. All results probably since I've been standing here are very consistent with what is projected in the budgets that are put forth by the district. We do provide information on revenues and expenditures. One of the highlights here is really revenues per ADM. The district does receive slightly more revenue than its competitors, or not competitors, that's not the right word, it's comparable districts in the 7-county metro area. Most of that particular revenues is in state aid and property tax levy. You'll see in this particular year, revenues did increase in a couple of areas, the general education aid I talked about, but also in long-term facilities maintenance with the implementation of a 10-year plan going in place this past year. Overall, you would see in this particular presentation the expenditures on a per-student basis. As you would anticipate, the district receives slightly more than average in the revenues on a per-student basis compared to other metro area school districts. You would then anticipate that expenditures would be slightly above average, which is certainly being seen on this particular presentation. In 2018, the audit year that I audited, you'd find the results would be expenditures increased slightly, mostly in the area of contractual improvements in salaries and benefits, which are pretty typical. We also then provide information on the general fund trends, the particular results within a particular fund, the general fund being the main financial fund of the district. The general fund financial results, again, as you can see on the trend line above there, are very consistent, both from an equity perspective and a cash perspective. The fund balance and the equity position of the district has not only been consistent but solid, but also consistent with the results you would anticipate within the budget projections that are put forth by the members of the finance team. We do provide data here on more particular numbers at the year, but we like to focus on the fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. That is the percentage that the district uses. You can see over the last 3 years that percentage has been roughly anywhere between 23 and 25%, which is very consistent, very planful results, and certainly shows a very solid financial position overall. The district also, or the financial report does provide information on students. I'm not going to go through all that. We also do provide information on revenues, both from one year to the next, as well as expenditures from one year to the next. I think the highlight of these two particular graphs relates back to the financial results. The financial results for the year were a perfect combination for an auditor like me. Revenues were slightly above budget and expenditures were slightly below budget. The perfect combination from a perspective of a budgeting perspective. Not only that, the revenues came in roughly 0.9% over the final budget, which is very, very close when it comes to a school district budgeting perspective. The operation of the organization is roughly $260 million, almost $270 million. And the variance is around $2 million to budget, which is very close. That's a number that I find is most important, probably as part of this presentation, because this audit is really 4 or 5 months old, and you're getting information constantly from finance and from people, and you have to be confident that the information you're getting will hold true in the end, and that's really what this audit shows. The results are close to budget and the expectation, and you can rely on the information you're getting to make good informed decisions. We do also then show information on other funds. I think the other most important ones here certainly are the capital account, but the food service account, the community service fund are also showing good financial positions individually. So with that, I'll summarize the presentation. I was able to provide a clean opinion on the basic financial statements. I had the 2 findings that were reported. Most importantly, the corrective action plan has been implemented by the district. I pointed out that the financial results reflect an adherence to the budget that is put forth. One of the other highlights that I didn't mention, but I think is important in summary, is the district does an excellent job of focusing not only on the current obligations, but the long-term obligations. You have several funds, both funding for severance obligations, but also OPEB obligations that are very well funded and consistent with the focus towards long-term funding. You don't see that at every district that I work with, and that has been really a factor forever at Osseo. That's really important. And lastly, that last particular bullet is really an important, probably the most important part of this presentation, and that is we do find the financial records to be in excellent condition. This audit runs very, very smoothly. It's usually one of the first audits that we complete, and really we find the audit to be very, very efficient. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chair?
School board members? Yes, Dr. Burgett?
First of all, once again, I'd like to congratulate Kelly Benusa and Mike and Cindy for your great work all the time consistently to produce a clean opinion and make sure that there are numbers and information that we can rely on to make informed decision. That's very important, so thank you so much. And then I also had a question about you said it was GASB 75 and how that relates to accounting for OPEB liabilities. Or, could you talk a little bit more about that and how is that going to change our financial balance sheet going forward?
Yeah, so the school district reports its OPEB obligations in what's called an internal service fund. That particular internal service fund is within your financial report as its own separate fund. It's actually separated out. You do have an OPEB trust that's a revocable OPEB trust that is funding those particular obligations. The financial results in terms of in the report, we reported what's called a change in accounting principle, which ultimately reports that full liability on your financial statements when previously it was only the funding of that liability. So the financial results in that internal service funds are true. They actually now report, well, here I have a trust, X amount, I have full liability for OPEB of X amount, and now you have a true net position. I think at the end of the year, I can look it up here quickly. I think the net position in that particular fund is roughly $4.7 million on a $10 million obligation. So it does show that those funds are fully funded, if you will, and they're also not only fully funded, but setting in a trust, which can't be used for any other purpose other than OPEB. So that's really a summary of that particular.
In that trust, a couple years ago, it was decided to move it out of some very low-performing assets and into higher-performing assets that more directly match the long-term nature of those benefits. And I know that the income from that has gone up substantially, adding to the good position that we're currently in.
Good point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Director Hanke?
Just for the public's sake, can you give the definition of OPEB?
Yes. OPEB is other post-employment benefits, which in layman's terms is the district provides a benefit to employees for health insurance when they retire. It's all based on employment contracts and written language in contracts. That is within the individual people's contract, but that's what it pertains to.
Thank you.
Great question.
And in some of those post-employment benefits, Director Hanke, have been taken out of the contracts years ago, and this is the long, long tail of retirement payments that were generated many years ago.
Yeah, great point.
I would just add they've been sunset, and to those who were there prior to the sunset provision, it'll take a while to run out, but yes, they have been sunset. One of my favorite topics.
Yeah, Director Craig?
Not to be redundant, but yes, thank you to our, to Kelly Benusa, Patricia Magnuson, all of the hard work that goes into the budgeting process. It's great seeing these results, and our community can have great confidence in the work that we're doing here in District 279, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would also echo that same sentiment, and thank you to you and your colleagues for consolidating all of the audit data.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I'd like to thank Patricia for answering a lot of my questions over the last couple of days. So thank you. I'm going to keep this meeting shorter tonight because of that, so we all thank you. No other questions? We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the consent agenda. And I'd like to ask board members, are there any items on the consent agenda that you would like to remove for separate consideration? Okay, no. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
And second, and all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
So the first action item on tonight's agenda is the fiscal year 2018 audit report and student activity report. And Tricia will give us some of that information, and we've just had that information from Kelly.
Right, I have
also.
nothing to add, so I
Okay.
just recommend we accept the reports as received.
Okay. Board, is there a motion to approve the audit report and student activity report?
So moved.
Moved by Director Douglas. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Henke. Is there any discussion? Again, here's my point to say thank you for all the hard work that went into that. All in favor of accepting the audit report, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The second action is the second reading of the Policy 403, Discipline, Suspension, and Dismissal of School Employees. Mr. Palmentier?
Thank you, Chair Staffi, school board members, and Superintendent Bauk. Chair Staffi, if I may, I'd like to address action items B through E, and then the board can obviously take action with respect to those action items. Revisions or repeal of policies 403, 506, 550, and 551 are all action items on tonight's agenda. The first reading of the aforementioned policies was at the regular meeting of the school board on October 23rd, 2018. At least 4 weeks have passed since the first reading of these policies, and under school board bylaws, if approved by the board this evening, the revised policies or repeal of policies will be adopted. So the policies for the board's consideration and approval are as follows. Policy 403, which pertains to employee discipline, suspension, and dismissal. The proposed amendments to this policy include minor modifications to the policy's description of the types of discipline or redirection that may be utilized in progressive discipline of employees. In addition, the proposed amendments include removal of language from the current policy addressing grounds for discharge for certain employees. This change is being proposed because the grounds for discharge for nearly all school employees is either addressed by state statute, applicable collective bargaining agreements, or the district employee handbook. Next for the board's consideration will be policy 506 concerning student discipline. The policy was left largely intact. However, the proposed policies provide clarification for the very narrow circumstances under which a student may be subject to discipline for conduct off school grounds or when not involved in a school activity. In keeping with established legal precedent, the proposed amended policy indicates that students may be subject to discipline for off-school conduct that creates a substantial disruption or material interference with the school environment or school activity. In addition, the proposed policy adds theft, damage, and destruction of school property as specific forms of student misconduct that may result in disciplinary action. And finally, policies 550 concerning student suspension and policies 551 concerning student expulsions are both being proposed for repeal, since the grounds and processes for both these suspension and expulsion processes are heavily controlled and dictated by Minnesota People Fair Dismissal Act, which again negates the need for these respective policies.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Palmentier. So we will go through each of these action items one at a time. Is there a motion to approve the revisions to Policy 403, Discipline, Suspension, and Dismissal of School Employees?
So moved.
So moved by Director Henke. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Douglas. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Is there, next action is Policy 506, Student Discipline. Is there a motion to approve the revisions to Policy 506, Student Discipline?
So moved.
So moved by Director Henke. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Douglas. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to note that in Section 3 of the policy, there was a lot of discussion on the addition to that paragraph of respect to the non-school functions, student conduct occurring off-school property. It's just reflecting that off-site incidents can be brought back into the school building. And so this is reflecting how something off-site can come into the schools and cause a disruption. So hence the addition to the policy.
Okay, any other discussion? And thank you for bringing that up. Reading through it, I had a hard time accepting putting the reach of the district out into people's homes, and but there is a lot of sense into some of this when it comes to the communications. It will have a direct impact at the school, and it has to have the direct impact at the school. So with that, is there any other discussion? No? All in favor of accepting policy 506, student discipline, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. The next action is the reading of policy, or is policy 550. So is there a motion to approve the repeal of policy 550, student suspension?
So moved.
So moved by Director Douglas. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Henke. Is there any discussion on this? All in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. The next action is approving repeal of policy 551, student exclusion and expulsion. Is there a motion to approve the repeal of policy 551?
So moved.
So moved by Director Henke. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Douglas. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. I want to thank the two of you for doing those, so I didn't have to remember everybody's name this time. So, the final action tonight, action item tonight, is a recommendation to accept gifts to the district totaling $26,307.45. Is there a motion to accept gifts to the district totaling $26,370.45?
I would move to graciously accept gifts to the district of $26,307.45.
Director Henke
Second.
Graciously approves, and a second by Director Douglas. Is there any discussion? Thank you to all who donated. Your gifts are generous, and they're well needed. Thank you. Is there any, that was the discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0 to graciously accept gifts to the district. Thank you. So, under informational items this evening, we will have first readings of policies, and Mr. Palmetier will share information with us regarding the first reading of Policy 613, which is graduation requirements, Policy 652, instructional materials, selection, production, and reevaluation, and Policy 654, instructional materials reevaluation. Mr. Palmetier.
Thank you, Chair Staffi, school board members, and Superintendent Bauk. This is going to sound vaguely familiar to Director Douglas's report on the Policy Committee meeting from October. But anyhow, as Director Douglas did report, there are 3 policies that are on the agenda for tonight for first reading. I will note that the dates are probably more correct on my version as opposed to Director Douglas's, and I apologize for that. The first policy recommended for first reading tonight is Policy 613 concerning graduation requirements. The current version of the policy was last revised in 2003. Since that time, Minnesota statutory requirements for graduation have significantly changed. The proposed rewrite of the policy reflects current statutory credit and course requirements. The proposed rewrite further defines a limited number of exceptions to the credit or course requirements for students with unique needs. And finally, the redrafted policy sets forth standards for early graduation that are in keeping with Minnesota law and district practice. The next policy recommended for first reading tonight is Policy 652, Instructional Materials Selection and Production. This policy was last adopted in 2003. The proposed revisions to the policy include formatting changes to align with current policies, deletion of references to repealed policies, and a revision of the definition of instructional materials that is more succinct. In addition, the revised policy includes a more detailed list of criteria professional staff should employ in the selection of instructional materials. The new selection criteria proposed align with Minnesota School Boards Association model policies, and they reflect current state mandates pertaining to instruction in English and American heritage education. And finally, the revised policy incorporates the provisions of Policy 654, which affords a process for challenging the district's selection of instructional materials. And lastly, on for first read tonight is the repeal of Policy 654, instructional materials and reevaluation. As just indicated, this policy also was last adopted in 2003. And again, this policy is being incorporated into the revised Policy 652. As a result, this policy is being proposed for repeal on first read. First reading begins a 4-week period of reaction to the proposed policy changes by concerned groups or individuals. After a 4-week period, the school board may adopt a repeal or amend policy after the second reading. The proposed policies are available on the school district website with this agenda for this meeting. Comments also on the policies discussed here tonight may be directed to the school board or to myself. Comments on this policy may also be provided online to the school board, from the school board policy and procedures website on the school district website.
Thank you, Mr. Palmetier. Board, any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to add one piece. So within Policy 652, as Policy Committee discussed, when it's appropriate, we've added in the state statute reference so that if anyone is wondering how and why we came up with the language that we did, if it felt really appropriate, we included the statute right within that sentence or paragraph, just so folks don't have to go search for the statute. I should say statute reference.
Thank you, Director Hanke. Any other comments? Last agenda item is announcements. The full schedule of board meetings are available on the district website at district279.org. Members of tonight's audience and those watching at home can view a list of the upcoming meetings on the boardroom monitor as soon as Barb presses the button. I'll let that go up there. And that, so work sessions, regular meetings throughout the end of the year are listed. So actually, our last agenda item is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Director Hanke, do we have a second?
Second.
Director Douglas, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 6-0. The meeting is adjourned at 6:50 p.m.